Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our review of Evil Dead 2013.
We're gonna get you, not another beat. Time to go to sleep.
So, Evil Dead 2013 has a very special place in my heart. I remember it vividly when this film came out in theaters. This was something that I got a bunch of friends together, convinced my father to take a bunch of, I want to say we were 15, maybe 14, 15, going to see this movie. There was like 8 of us. And we all went and saw it. He paid for, I don't think he paid for all the tickets, but he bought them all so he could go see it. And yeah, it was quite an experience. I remember everybody talking about this movie when it was on the lead up. I remember everybody saying this is going to be the most gruesome film ever put to screen. And although it is very gruesome, I don't think it's that. Luke, what was your first exposure to the Evil Dead remake or Evil Dead 2013?
This one, I'm prior to us doing all the iterations of our podcast, I was not very much of a theater goer. I tried to avoid it at all costs. So, Evil Dead, I actually saw on Blu-ray. This was when we both worked at a used media store. I worked a couple years before you. This was day one pickup. We would get the new releases come in, and this was one that I instantly picked up because I had heard some things about it. I mean, the cover's an instant seller for any Evil Dead fans. So this was one that I definitely picked up as soon as it showed up. You get the digital copy as well. And, I watched it. I remember getting it in the day and going home and instantly watching this one. It's one of my favorites, honestly, because, I went back and we talked about the original Evil Dead, and I had seen that one. Wasn't initially a huge fan of it. And, going into this one, I think this one reignited my interest in Evil Dead initially, kind of going back and watching those ones. Army of Darkness is always one that I would go back and watch regularly just because I had a nostalgia for it. The other ones, not so much. But after seeing Evil Dead 2013, I was like, let me give my reappraisal of, the original Evil Dead. And I think this one really did reignite that and kind of got the ball rolling. I think this did introduce a lot of people into those original Evil Dead films.
Absolutely. You and I have a very similar trajectory there where I saw the first Evil Dead. And we both said this in our first review for the original, where we saw it and we weren't the biggest fans initially. It's one of those ones where, like you said, you grew up very much on the Army of Darkness side of things. You said you saw that before you saw the original?
Yes. Yeah, that one was Army of Darkness was on TV all the time. The original Evil Dead was never.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like you already had like your definitive Evil Dead in your mind when you saw that. And then for me, it was just one of those things where it's like I am coming into slashers and the horror space, and I'm very much like in tune with that Friday the 13th 2009 remake right there, where it's just like, it's flashy, it's interesting, it's violent. So the Evil Dead just looks, or Evil Dead the original looks cheap and looks very, kind of like, oh, this is, just a couple people just throwing this together. The acting feels stiff. My brain wasn't there. I wasn't fully developed in the sense of like, this was made for no money. And this was literally just slapped together by a bunch of friends over 4 years. So, when this film started coming out, I saw the trailer and was instantly just like drawn with Mia at the end of that trailer, with the "we're gonna get you" thing, and just how impactful that was. So yeah, it encouraged me to go back and check out the other films and rewatch the original. And I'm really glad I did, because again, this has become one of my favorite all-time horror series. And I have to credit this movie. I have to. I really think that Fede Alvarez, Sam Raimi, the team behind this, they really knew what they were doing when they were trying to, usher in a new era of Deadite fans. And I think they nailed it. I really think, just coming out of the gate here, I can say this is, without a doubt, one of the best requels, I guess we could call it now. It was called a remake for a long time, but there's things behind it, and there's things that kind of say, and the director has said that this is more of a sequel to the first film. Um, so I think that this is probably, if you had to write a book on how to do it, this would be one of those examples you'd have to put in it, because I think it fires on all cylinders.
Yes, and you know, this one here really shows, I think the care that was put into this one. Where especially at the time, you don't really see a product like this coming out as pristine. I think because it's like when we're looking back at a lot of the initial IPs that were coming out, and we're like, okay, we got to go into the well for this one and that one, where you have a Nightmare on Elm Street and you have The Thing, and it's like all those have their issues, a lot of them being the effects. And this, it seemed like there was something missing from the story initially, where this one, you know owning the Blu-ray and watching all the special features of it with the interviews and everything like that, and understanding the love that was put into this. And it was almost this almost unique concept, kind of in a sense, where it was like, Fede Alvarez, we're doing practical. It's like, a lot of people don't get to call those shots, and this one was really, I think everyone was really aware of the love the initial Evil Dead had.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, we can't disappoint those fans. And there are requirements in this film that we have to hit. We have to go practical. We have to, we can't recast Bruce Campbell and do an Ash. It's like we can't go that route. So we kind of have to tell a tweaked story, and kind of still with the DNA of the original, but also kind of giving you a different spin on it, when we look at that story, but kind of pleasing the initial fans as well as pleasing more so general audience goers at that time, which I think, you don't find a film that can do that and too often. And this one absolutely did.
Yeah, and I mean, it really brought Evil Dead into this whole new era. In a sense where they didn't really follow up on it until just recently with what appears to be, Evil Dead Rise. Not that it's a direct sequel or anything, but the fact of just really taking Evil Dead from, having these, horror roots with the first film, and really leaning into horror very sparingly, a little bit of comedy interspliced through there, mostly more of a darker comedy from the Deadites,
Yeah.
and then moving into, two gets a little more comedic. There's definitely more slapstick stuff coming into that, as to where Army of Darkness, it is very much comedy influenced. They're really trying to walk this a line of it being a horror adventure film in a sense. And they really, I think, executed it beautifully. This one, they really wanted to get back to those roots. And I think coming out in 2013 with just kind of the landscape that we had, like I said, the Friday the 13th remake was 2009, so we're not too far off there from this. They really understood that, if we're going to tell this story to this modern audience, it needs to have a little bit more bite. It needs to lean on the horror stuff. And I don't think they completely lose a lot of the comedy. There's definitely moments that, again, go back to the darker comedy where, you have Mia saying your sister will suck cocks in hell and stuff like that, and it's like, it's kind of funny, but it's fucked up. So, it's one of those things where I think that they walk that line very eloquently, so that way you can satisfy both camps. Of course, you're going to have those people out there who are upset that Ash isn't a part of this. But I think that as time has gone on, more people have grown to accept this and accept it as kind of an alternative timeline. And, I got a video coming out that's going to talk about that. But yeah, no, I think that this one is also a rare example of a film that, has just grown. It's something where it's like you either loved it or you liked it, but you couldn't let yourself love it because it didn't have Ash Williams and it wasn't that, Army of Darkness style. But as time's gone on, people have really grown on this film.
Yeah. And I think, going into the creation of, oh, we're going to bring Evil Dead into, modern times right now, I think, some fans got defensive. Oh, well, you got to have Ash in it, and that's what we're used to. So it's like kind of trying it on and seeing how it fits here with, oh, we're not going to have Ash in here, and it's one of those things where we talked about it in our previous review of the original Evil Dead, where I think Sam Raimi creates this intriguing kind of lore, and he sets up a lot of things that we can kind of branch out. You gotta have a tree reference, but in kind of tell these stories, and we don't need an Ash. We don't need any of the original cast. We have the established lore that we can kind of apply to different scenarios and different characters, as we're seeing in Evil Dead Rise. We're kind of taking that on, and we're gonna put a different spin on it with some of the roots that we have in Evil Dead.
You
So
can't
it's
help
like
yourself, can
um
you?
I can't. So it's like, and I think like this was a showcase to say we're gonna pay tribute to the original stuff. We're not gonna forget that. We know what the fans want, but we're also we're gonna modernize it and give general horror fans what they might want and don't know about Evil Dead. And I think that's really what they did here. And that's why it's like I think this is almost a moment in time where it's very hard to pick out these films, where a lot of times this doesn't exist, where you can really you lean 50-50, where it's like there's some good and there's a lot of bad, but this one is really, it's, for me, this is one of my favorite of the entire franchise.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's tough for me to say where this lies in the franchise because, again, I think they're all aces. I think
Yeah,
everything that they've done Evil Dead wise, including the show, is really good. If I had to
it's
put it
A1, A B, that's how it
exactly,
goes.
and for me, out of this series, if you need me to rank it for you, it's like the show would probably become last. But again, that's my most recent exposure to it,
Yeah.
and I think that it satisfies every itch this franchise. You have, the original and this one, which lean more horror. You have the excellent, kind of what a lot of people I think consider to be the perfect amalgamation of the two with Evil Dead 2. And then you have the people who, again, they like the comedy more. They want that more adventurous, wider scope Evil Dead with Army of Darkness. And this one, I gotta say, I gotta give a lot of credit to Fede Alvarez too, because the guy had a monumental task of taking this franchise that he knew was going to have backlash. He knew that people were protective of it, and taking the stab, trusting, and I guess Sam Raimi more trusting him to be the person to take that stab. And this guy was discovered off of his short film Panic Attack. That's where Sam Raimi found him, and that's where he picked him out to direct this. So he had never even directed a film before this. He had only done short films up to this point. And so it's kind of impressive that, they trusted this franchise with such a newcomer like that. And obviously, we've seen what Fede Alvarez has gone on to do. He started his own little franchise there with a great, I can say for myself, fantastic first film with Don't Breathe. Have not seen the sequel. Luke, you've seen it. I'll leave that to you. But yeah, Fede Alvarez. I mean, this guy, I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be in the horror space for a long time coming.
Yeah, I think Fede, he brings this kind of dementedness to his stories, and I think, going into Evil Dead, I didn't know what to expect there. It's like, you look at Don't Breathe, which again is an exceptional film. I think when he was a producer on Don't Breathe too, he didn't
Mhm.
direct it, but which is, a whole different conversation. But, I think he brings the uniqueness and dementedness to these different stories here. And I think that's where it's like, you look at the Evil Dead here, and it's just like, um, I think a lot of people talk about the story here that's ingrained, where you look at the original and it's just friends going out to a cabin. Here, we're bringing the detoxing element, which I think is a very
Yeah.
unique. It's pretty basic, but I think it works so well to facilitate exactly what's going on in the story, and it kind of plays into that whole, is she hallucinating? We know as an audience and what we went to go see that she's not, but it can be easily discounted by the rest of the cast, and it's like we believe that, and I think that was a great, simple but effective element that they do bring here. And I think that's kind of more of that modern storytelling that I think people can relate to, whereas like that didn't exist back in the 80s, that wasn't talked about. But bringing it into 2013, it's something that is relatable, and it's something that it really does add to the story when we kind of keep progressing to it. And then it's like, with I brought it up already, where how adamant he was about the practical effects. And I think
Mhm.
there's a little part, I think is on YouTube. I think I ran across it where they're showing the special effects that went into this and how he was really adamant about we need to do that, and the performances you get from those special effects. And I think that really does show here. You get a camaraderie with the characters in going out into the cabin, but I think you also get a lot of great performances when we do inject that terror, which I think again Fede he's perfect at doing.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite new additions to this franchise that I really hope we get to see a return of is Jane Levy. Um, this is a breakout film for her. I believe she was in a couple other things before this, but I think they were smaller projects. I'll double check on that for us. But I mean, she absolutely kills it as Mia. She kind of steps in and takes the pseudo Ash Williams role. And it's one of those things where it's like, you just kind of you got to kind of roll with it, and you got to kind of say like, I'm stepping into these shoes, I'm sliding on the chainsaw, I guess as you'd say. And fans are going to hate me at first, but I really think that she killed it through and through. I know that not being so attached to the franchise when it first started, I was a big Mia fan walking out of the theater. I think that it's really gritty. I love how they execute the chainsaw arm in this, where it's so brutal, and the stump and everything, just stabbing it in there. Like, it's all so interesting and so cool. And she really carries this film. And I love the switch up because, you have her brother who, a lot of people, especially I think they kind of do this. I think it was Shiloh Fernandez as David. A lot of people would say that he is going to be our Ash Williams. You see it throughout the film, but no, by the third act, he's dead. And then you're like, oh, fuck. Like, who's going to save the day but Mia, who kind of gets to play that dual role where she's the inciting deadite, but then she's also the hero. So it's like they really took their time to like say, let's change up this formula. Let's make it something creative. Let's make it something cool that the Evil Dead fans haven't seen yet. And it's, again, really, really well executed.
And that's one of the things I was going to bring up is the Mia character here, where they really do subvert your expectations. I think they do it. You brought up the Friday 13th, remake, where it's like I think they do it a little bit there too. Whereas you think Mia is really just the Deadite. That's what she's going to be. But they bring this arc around where by the end of it, she is our protagonist completely. And David is, like you said, by the third act, he's in a rearview mirror. He's gone. I really love that they added that element to it, because that's something on my first watch here I was not expecting,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, and
I
I
don't
think
think
that
anybody
adds again,
was.
yeah, and I think that adds to the storytelling here, where it was like they wanted that DNA of the original Evil Dead, but they put care into the story to say, well, we got to give fans something different here. We got to take them on a ride. This can't be a complete remake where we're gonna cast a new Ash, and that's the formula we're going to use. They took the intriguing elements of the original formula, and then they put their own spin on this one. And that's what I think. This is why I don't know what the consensus was when this initially came out. I just know that there is a pretty big love for it, especially recently on Twitter amongst things, where they talk very highly of this film, where it's like I
Mhm.
think it's absolutely worth the praise. I think the storytelling was great. Obviously, the practical effects are wonderful. This was a great modern version of an original 1980s classic.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, so nothing but high praise from us here, guys, on Evil Dead 2013. Obviously, we said it in our last video. All of these films are going to end up on as podcast episodes. So we're not going to dive too deep into everything, but those are our just kind of general thoughts to get out before Evil Dead Rise comes out, which, we're just a week away now here. So I'm real excited for it. I'm looking forward to all that. We got more Evil Dead content coming to you guys on the channel, of course. But yeah, I guess that's going to wrap us up here. So if you're new to the channel and you're just discovering us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before May 9th. I think we can do it. Hopefully we'll get some big bumps as we move through the Evil Dead week. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. Other than that, we do have our original review for, Evil Dead back in 1981. So you can check out our thoughts on that, of course. And yeah, we got a lot of great new movies coming. I mean, not just Evil Dead, but we got a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned, hit that subscribe button again, and yeah, we will be here. But alrighty, so until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.